The soup had gone cold, but I hadn't touched it anyway. I just sat there, staring at the newspaper in front of me, my hand still trembling from the moment I flipped to the obituary page and saw my own face looking back at me. Evelyn Grace Harper, beloved wife, devoted mother, passed peacefully in her sleep. The words blurred, but not from tears. I hadn't cried. Not yet. It felt like someone had vacuumed the air out of the room, and the only sound left was the slow tick of the antique kitchen clock behind me, the one Arthur gave me on our 25th anniversary. That clock never lied, and it was still ticking. Which meant I was still breathing. But someone wanted me gone. The obituary was detailed. Too detailed. My birth date, the name of the church where I used to sing in the choir, even the name of my late dog, Bramble. This wasn't a prank. This was personal. I picked up the phone. Eric's number, my only son, just rang and rang. Lena, his wife, answered instead. Her voice was light, cheery, forced. "Oh, Evelyn, what a shock. I mean, miracle. You're alive?" She sounded surprised, but not worried, not relieved. "I need to speak to Eric," I said. "He's in meetings," she replied. "Can I take a message?" My hand clenched around the spoon beside my bowl. I was gripping it like a weapon. Something in her tone. It was off. Like she'd rehearsed this. "No, just tell him his mother's not dead. Not yet, anyway." I hung up. My mind spiraled. Who would fake my death? And why? What did they stand to gain? The mail sat untouched by the door. I opened it with a knife. A single white envelope. No return address. Inside, a funeral invitation. Mine. Same photo, same details. Service at St. Andrew's in 3 days. Then the phone rang again. Blocked number. I answered. A man's voice, low and calm. "Sometimes the dead should stay buried," he said. "Your time is up." The line went dead, and so did the room. Just me, the soup, the ticking clock, and a lie so big it made my skin crawl. Someone buried me alive, but I wasn't done breathing. Not yet. It was the soup that did it. The memory came back so vivid, I could still smell the rosemary and garlic clinging to the air. 3 nights ago, Lena came over unannounced and insisted on cooking dinner. "Just relax, Evelyn," she said, tying on an apron far too cheerful for the mood in our house. "You deserve to be taken care of." Arthur gave me a look, one of those looks that says, "Let her." So I sat at the kitchen table, pretending not to notice Lena wiping the rim of my bowl with a cloth before serving it. Tomato basil, my favorite. She even added a sprig of parsley on top, like she was plating for a magazine shoot. I dipped my spoon in, brought it to my lips. It tasted off. Not spoiled, not bad, just bitter, metallic almost. I forced a smile. "You've really improved, Lena." She laughed too loudly. "Practice makes perfect." Arthur barely touched his bowl. He kept checking his watch, fiddling with the gold band on his finger, the same one I gave him the day we promised forever. "I was thinking," I started. "Maybe it's time we updated the will." Arthur stiffened. Lena's spoon froze midair. He coughed, forced a chuckle. "Oh, Eve, not this again." "I'm just saying—" "We're fine," he cut in. "We have the old one. Nothing's changed." Lena chimed in, her voice sugar-sweet. "I mean, unless you're planning to go somewhere soon, Evelyn." Her eyes glittered. "And we'd know if you were, right?" Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I pushed the soup aside. "It's cold now." Lena stood, collected the bowls. "I'll get dessert." Arthur stood too. "I'll help her." He didn't look at me. They whispered in the kitchen. I couldn't hear, but I could feel it. That tension, that something between them. I looked down into the bowl. Just a few inches of red left swirling at the bottom. And that's when I heard it. Clink. A gold ring, Arthur's ring, sat heavy in the spoon. Cold. Out of place. I stared at it. Heart hammering. Why wasn't it on his hand? And why did he let her serve me? The soup had gone cold long ago, but the betrayal was just heating up. It was pale blue with tiny hand-stitched flowers. The silk scarf lay tucked inside Arthur's desk drawer, right beneath the old land titles and a leather-bound planner he hadn't touched in years. I remember thinking it was strange. Arthur wasn't the sentimental type. He never kept trinkets. He didn't even keep our wedding cards. "What's the point?" he used to say. "We lived it. We don't need souvenirs." But the scarf wasn't from us. It wasn't even mine. I picked it up gently, and the scent rose instantly. Not lavender, which I always wore. This was sharper, sweeter, something expensive, a kind of perfume that lingers on skin and sheets like it wants to be remembered. I held it to my nose again. That scent. It didn't belong in my house. When Arthur walked in, I turned, still holding it. "Whose is this?" He barely blinked. "Oh, that? Must be from a client. People leave things in meetings all the time." I waited for more. There wasn't any. His voice was calm, too calm. "She must have dropped it?" he added. I folded the scarf and set it down slowly. "Do your clients usually leave things in drawers?" He paused, just long enough to tell me I wasn't imagining it. "It's nothing, Eve. Just clutter." He kissed the top of my head and walked off. I stayed in that room long after his footsteps faded down the hall. My hands still smelled like the perfume. I opened the window. The breeze came in, but the scent stayed, like it knew I wasn't ready to forget. Arthur had secrets. Maybe they were harmless, maybe they weren't. But I'd been with that man for more than half my life, and suddenly it felt like I didn't know what half of it meant. Later that night, I found the scarf again. Not in the drawer, but neatly folded in the laundry basket, as if it belonged. I held it tight, curled up on the edge of the bed where his body no longer reached me. "That's not mine," I whispered. "That was never mine." And that was the first night I didn't sleep beside him. Not really. The last time Arthur and I sat at the dining table together, it wasn't for dinner. It was to rewrite our will. He had laid everything out in neat stacks. "We'll keep it simple," he said. "No drama, no surprises." That was always his favorite phrase. The room smelled faintly of ink and lemon polish. The big window let in the softest light. I remember thinking how quiet it felt, like the house itself was listening. He handed me the papers. My name was there, Eric's name, a few charities I had insisted on. Nothing fancy, just fair. We both signed the first page together. Then Arthur paused. "Wait," he said. "I want to change something." I looked up. "What?" "Just the distribution clause. I'll handle it. We can sign the final version after lunch." He tucked the draft into a blue envelope, the kind I used for birthday cards, and walked off toward his study. That was the last I saw of it. We never signed the final version. At the time, I didn't think twice. Life got busy. Eric and Lena were visiting more often. Arthur said the lawyer would file everything. "It's handled," he told me, but it wasn't, because the version I found months later in his drawer looked different. My name was there, but the balance had shifted. Lena's share was larger. The charities were gone. My signature? Missing. I asked Arthur about it. He shrugged. "I must have used the wrong draft." He smiled like it didn't matter. But it did. That blue envelope. He said he left it in the safe. But when I checked that drawer again after the funeral invitation came, it was empty. Clean. Like someone had wiped my name out of existence. Not a single page. Not even a paperclip. I stood there, staring at the lock I had opened 100 times before. Nothing. Not even dust. I sat on the floor with the drawer pulled open beside me, hands resting on my knees. We wrote our future that day, but only one of us meant it. The rain was loud that night, so loud it drowned out my thoughts. It wasn't just falling, it was attacking the windshield in sheets, like the sky wanted to wash me off the road. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter as I turned onto Ridgeway Curve. That stretch always made me uneasy. Steep drop, no guardrail. And on nights like this, the mist curled up from the earth like it had secrets to tell. The wipers fought hard, screeching back and forth. I pressed the brake gently. Nothing. Not a slow stop, not even a shudder. Just nothing. My heart skipped. I tapped it again, harder this time. Still nothing. I leaned forward, knuckles white on the wheel. No, no, no. The curve was coming fast. Too fast. I yanked the wheel. The tires screamed. The car fishtailed. I saw trees, then sky, then water. The world spun and folded into itself. Then impact. Glass shattered like brittle bones. A flash of cold. A roar of silence. The car landed nose first in a shallow ravine, tilted like a dying animal. The dashboard clock blinked. 3:09 a.m. It ticked once, then again, and then stopped. I was alive, but barely. My head throbbed. My shoulder screamed. I tried to move but couldn't feel my legs. Water began to seep in through the passenger door. I coughed, tasted blood and rain. No headlights, no horns. No one came. That road was always empty at night. Arthur said it was the peaceful route. I laughed, but it came out as a sob. Peaceful, my foot. Through the shattered windshield, I saw dark figures moving, trees maybe, or something else. Then I heard it. A squelch. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching against the wet gravel. Someone was out there, not running, not calling for help, just watching. I tried to scream, but it came out broken. My hand slapped against the horn. It gave one weak honk before dying completely. Then everything blurred. The cold took over. The last thing I remember was the sound of boots in the mud and the faint ticking of the dashboard clock, trying, just trying, to hold on. And then even time gave up on me. I woke up to the sound of gulls and the distant lapping of waves against wood. The air smelled like salt and smoke, sharp and clean. And when I opened my eyes, the ceiling above me was rough timber, not tile, not a hospital, not my bedroom. I tried to sit up, but a bolt of pain raced through my shoulder. My right arm was wrapped tight in bandages, my knees bruised and raw. Someone had cleaned the cuts. Someone had saved me. Then I heard it, the scrape of boots on wooden planks. A man stepped into the room, weathered face, gray beard, one eye slightly squinting as if life had taught him to never look too directly at anything. He carried a mug of something steaming. "You're awake," he said. "Good." I swallowed. "Where am I?" "Boat shack, near the cove." He set the mug on a stool beside me. "Name's Tomas. Found you in the river mouth. You were half in, half out. Clinging to a branch like hell didn't want you, but heaven wasn't ready." His voice was rough, but not unkind. "Car?" "Gone," he said. "Tide's greedy." I looked down at my arms, scratches, bruises, but alive. "You call anyone?" I asked. He shook his head. "Power line to my boat radio's been sliced clean. No cell towers out here. And the nearest town's a hike." That sent a chill down my back. "You think that was an accident?" Tomas looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "I think whoever did this wanted you not found. Not fast, anyway." He handed me the mug. Ginger tea, warm and bitter. I sipped, hands trembling. "Why'd you help me?" "Because you were breathing," he said. "That was enough." I didn't ask for more. Outside, I saw the boat he mentioned, a faded blue wooden thing bobbing gently in the tide. The name stenciled on the side had flaked away, but I could still make out the letters. Lydia. That was my grandmother's name, a coincidence, maybe, or maybe the universe was telling me something. I looked out at the horizon, the sun just starting to rise over the water. I wasn't dead, but I couldn't go home. Not yet. The screen flickered, the signal stuttering with every gust of sea wind against the shack walls. Tomas had rigged up an old solar-powered generator and a tiny portable router. "It's not fast," he warned, "but it works." It worked just enough for me to see my own funeral. The livestream was on a small news station's YouTube channel. I stared, jaw clenched, as the camera panned across the church, white lilies at every corner. Arthur knew I hated lilies. "They smell like hospitals," I always said. There were photos of me displayed on easels, old ones, me with Eric in the garden, me holding Bramble when he was still a puppy, me smiling, believing, and then the program. Evelyn Grace Harper, beloved wife and mother, may she rest in peace. I nearly dropped the cup of tea Tomas had just refilled. The camera cut to the front row. Lena, dressed in black like it was Paris Fashion Week, veil perched just so, a silk handkerchief dabbing at dry cheeks. Eric sat beside her, stiff and pale, hands locked in his lap. He looked like a boy again, lost, hollow. She leaned in and whispered something to him. He didn't respond. Then I saw Arthur, only for a moment. He sat in the back corner, apart from the family row. His face unreadable, jaw tight. I waited for him to look up, to show anything, but he didn't. The priest spoke, a bland sermon, no real stories, nothing personal. "They're burying an idea," I whispered to myself, "not a person." Tomas didn't say anything. He just placed a small tin of cookies beside me and stepped out for a smoke. The camera zoomed in on the casket, closed, of course, no viewing, no autopsy, just a clean, neat lie. The camera cut again, this time to the program, zoomed close enough I could read it. She loved quietly, lived simply, and left peacefully. Left? I nearly laughed. I hadn't left anything. They took me, and now they were reading lines over a casket I never chose, with flowers I never liked, and words I never said. I stared at the screen and whispered, "May she rest in peace?" Not yet. Arthur used to say time was the only thing you couldn't lie to. He said it when he was angry, when I caught him making excuses or glossing over details. The clock always tells the truth, Eve, whether you want to hear it or not. And now, here I was, washed up, declared dead, and clawing my way back to truth with only breadcrumbs and shadows. I sat on Tomas's porch that night, rocking gently on the crooked swing while the sea whispered below. That's when I remembered something Arthur said once, after too much wine and a fight over our will. "If anything ever happens," he told me, "just remember, the only place time behaves is inside that clock." He meant the grandfather clock, the one in our study. 6 feet tall, cherry wood, with gold-plated hands and a pendulum that swung like it had something to say. He bought it at an estate sale when Eric was 12, said he liked how it kept secrets without forgetting them. Back then, I thought it was just romantic nonsense. But now I wondered. I thought back to a day not long before everything went wrong. A repairman came, an old man with crooked glasses. Arthur insisted on supervising alone, locked the study door. When I knocked, he said he was recalibrating. He spent hours in there, came out sweaty, flushed, and too quiet. I never asked what he was really doing. But what if the blue envelope wasn't the only copy? Arthur was obsessive when it came to paperwork. He made copies of everything, stashed them in different places, called it insurance. What if the will, the real one, had a twin? And what if he hid it in the one place only he ever touched? That clock never stopped ticking, even when our marriage did. I leaned back, the swing creaking behind me. If I wanted to uncover the truth, I'd have to go back, into my house, into my study, and into the mouth of that old wooden liar that might just be the only honest thing left. Time remembers, and I was finally ready to listen. There's something cruel about breaking into a place you used to call home. The back garden still smelled like rosemary and wet earth, but the hydrangeas were trimmed too neat. Lena's touch. I crouched by the stone planter near the shed, where I'd once hidden a spare key under a cracked ceramic toad. Still there. I slipped it into the lock, waited for that familiar click, and pushed the door open just enough to slide through. The hallway was darker than I remembered. Furniture had shifted. The family photo that used to hang above the console was gone. In its place, a modern art piece, all sharp lines and hollow colors. It didn't smell like my house anymore, not of lavender and old books. It smelled like Lena. I held my breath and moved quietly toward the study. The grandfather clock stood like a sentry in the corner, tall, silent, waiting. Its pendulum swayed gently, almost like it knew I'd come back. I opened the glass casing and reached beneath the heavy brass arc. My fingers brushed something metallic, cold, taped flat. A key, tiny, brass, worn at the edges. My heart thudded. I recognized it. Arthur used to carry it on his keyring before moving it somewhere safer. I turned to the desk, heart racing, pulled open the bottom drawer, tried the lock. Nothing, not the desk. I held it up to the light, a safety key. I swallowed hard. That meant a box, a vault. Somewhere out there, Arthur had tucked something away, something important enough to double lock and hide, something worth dying for, or worth faking a death for. A soft beep startled me. The security panel on the hallway wall blinked. My old code had triggered a silent timer. 30 seconds to leave before the alarm kicked in. I backed away from the desk, careful not to touch anything else. I retraced my steps, ducked out through the back, and pulled the door shut behind me. The garden was still silent. The world hadn't noticed I was alive. Not yet. I curled my fingers around the key in my pocket, feeling the shape of it burn into my palm. Arthur left me a way back. Now I had to find out where it led. There's a particular kind of cold that sinks into your bones when you're standing just outside the life you used to have. I wore a thick gray shawl, wide sunglasses, and a floppy straw hat pulled low. Nobody glanced twice at me on the sidewalk outside Pike and Warren, attorneys at law, except the secretary, who gave me a polite smile before returning to her keyboard. "Waiting for someone, ma'am?" "I'm just catching my breath," I said. "Long bus ride." She nodded, unconcerned. And then Lena walked in, hair slicked back, lipstick flawless, wearing a blazer so expensive it made the furniture look cheap. She greeted the receptionist by name. "Mr. Pike is expecting me," she purred. The door clicked shut behind her. I waited 10 seconds, then slid down the hall, as quiet as old guilt. I found a maintenance closet beside Pike's office. The door was slightly ajar. I listened. "She's really gone?" Pike asked. Lena laughed softly. "She's gone. Car totaled. No body yet, but the obituary was enough for the papers." "Careful," Pike warned. "This isn't a game." "It's not," she said. "It's a correction." I pressed my ear harder against the wood. "We've redrafted the will," Pike continued. "The new version names you primary beneficiary. Evelyn's charity clauses have been removed. Arthur's signatures are already notarized." "Perfect," Lena whispered. "Eric's still uncertain, but he trusts you." "He won't for long if you push too fast." I pulled out Thomas's old pocket recorder and hit record. "Once the court recognizes the new will," Pike said, "there's no going back." I stepped back. My heart thundered in my chest like it wanted out. They thought I was dead. And they were moving fast. I slipped out of the hallway and into the sunlight, pulling my shawl tighter against the wind. The tape was short, scratchy, but it was real, and now I had proof that someone wasn't just grieving me. They were replacing me. The mask had slipped, and behind it was a lawyer with two faces, one for the courtroom and one for the grave. Eric never liked secrets. When he was little, he'd blurt out birthday surprises within hours, ruin scavenger hunts before they began. "I can't hold it," he'd say. "It makes my chest hurt." So when I decided to reach him, I didn't use words first. I used memory. His old savings jar was still in my things, packed away with childhood art and loose photos. A cheap ceramic pig with one ear chipped and stickers peeling off. He used to stash coins in it, convinced it would buy him a telescope someday. I washed it, dried it gently, and slipped a note inside. "I'm alive. Meet me where you learn to ride your bike. Tomorrow, sunset." I sealed the slot with tape, wrapped the whole thing in a faded red scarf, and left it on the park bench beneath the tall maple, the one he crashed into at age 7. I watched from across the street the next morning. The jar was gone, but he never came. Not at sunset. Not after dark, not even a shadow. I told myself he didn't see it, that someone else took it, that maybe Lena came first, but the next day I saw him, walking past that same bench, alone, dressed in gray. He paused, just for a second, and looked right at the spot where the jar had been. He didn't sit. He didn't touch the bench. He just stood there, and then kept walking. No glance behind, no message, no voice, but his eyes. There was something in them, not quite guilt, not quite grief, just something broken, like he was swallowing a truth he didn't want to know. I stood behind a row of hedges, my breath catching in the cold air. "He saw it," I whispered. "I know he did." Tomas says sometimes people don't move toward you because they're scared of what it will cost. Maybe Eric is scared. Maybe he thinks I'm a ghost. Or maybe he's just not ready. But I left the bench untouched the next day, and the next, because if he comes again, I'll be there. Even if I can't speak, even if he never says a word. Sometimes the eyes speak first. And his? They were calling out through silence. The attic was colder than I remembered. Dust clung to the beams like old secrets, and the smell of mothballs and wood rot pressed in around me. Lena had ordered renovations, probably to erase me from the house completely. But the contractors hadn't started yet. The door still stuck the same way it always had, creaking just loud enough to make my heart stutter. I moved slowly, flashlight in one hand, the other running along the rafters like I was touching ghosts. Most of the boxes were labeled Xmas, books, Eric, school, and then, in Arthur's handwriting, donate. I opened it. Inside was a worn brown ledger with Arthur's initials embossed in gold. The pages were crisp with age, but packed with neat, obsessive scribbles. Dates, wire transfers, account numbers. I flipped through quickly, and then I saw it. A payment to someone named R. Langford. Lena's maiden name. And another. And another. Tens of thousands. He'd been paying her, or someone close to her, for years. Tucked beside the ledger was something I hadn't seen in decades. A small gold locket, the kind you'd give to a sweetheart in wartime. I recognized it immediately. Arthur gave it to me on our 10th anniversary, but I hadn't worn it in years. When I clicked it open, there was no photo, just a tiny slot. I tilted it, and something slipped out. A micro SD card, barely larger than a fingernail. I stared at it, stunned. Why hide digital memory inside something meant for the heart? Because he didn't want it found, because it mattered. I slid both the card and the ledger into my bag and sat down on the old chest beside me. The air felt heavier now, like it knew something I didn't. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't panic. It was preparation. Arthur had been moving money, shifting loyalties, building something in the dark, and the man who once promised me forever had left behind breadcrumbs for someone else to follow. Or maybe, deep down, he hoped I'd be the one to find them, because secrets buried under dust are still waiting to be uncovered. And this time, they were mine to reveal. The room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, clean, sharp, and strangely familiar. I hadn't seen Irene in nearly 10 years, but when she opened the door and saw me standing there, bruised and limping, she didn't hesitate. She just pulled me into a hug and said, "Come in." Back then, I'd helped her daughter get out of a mess no one else would touch. A mistake, a bad boyfriend, a judge who wanted to make an example. I'd made phone calls, pulled favors, wrote a letter when it mattered. Irene never forgot. Now it was her turn. She guided me to the worn recliner in her back room and turned on a small reading lamp. "Take off the coat," she said gently. "Let me see the damage." I did. My shoulder was worse than I thought. Deep purple bruising, an angry red welt where the seatbelt had locked in during the crash. She cleaned it, wrapped it, and didn't ask for details. Until I winced. Then she looked me in the eyes. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're targeted." That word hung in the air like smoke. She brewed fresh coffee, poured 2 cups. "You need help," she added, "and not just medical." I nodded. "I've got a key. A real one. To something they didn't want me to find." She tapped the locket gently. "And what's inside?" "Truth," I said. "I hope." She smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. "I have a cousin," she said. "Paralegal. She's discreet. She hates men in suits." I laughed. It hurt. "I can't go to the police yet," I said. "Not until I have enough to make it stick." Irene nodded. "Then we start small. We make a clean re-entry." "What's that mean?" "Your story, your files, your name, built back up the right way. Quiet, precise, legal, not flashy. You don't show up with fire. You come back with thunder hidden under silence." I stared at the ceiling as the pain in my body started to numb. It was the first time I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. "Thank you," I whispered. She didn't answer, just poured more coffee. "Some women cut you open. Others sew you back together without asking why you bled. Irene was the second kind. Banks are colder than they need to be. Not just in temperature, but in tone, in lighting, in the way no one looks you straight in the eye. I wore my plainest clothes, dyed my hair a dusty brown. No makeup. Just a folder of perfectly aged documents Irene's cousin had helped me prepare. "Estate access," I told the bank manager. "I'm Evelyn Harper's cousin, closest surviving relative. I believe Arthur left something behind." He frowned. "We'd need identification." I slid him a paper that looked real because it was almost real. Signed, notarized, just enough legitimacy to slow down suspicion. He made a few calls. 30 minutes later, I was walking behind a heavy steel door, escorted into the belly of the bank, the vault air sharp as ice against my skin. Box 317 waited. I took out the brass key. My hand trembled. Click. The lid opened with a soft hiss. Metal-breathing secrets. Inside, the blue envelope, still sealed, still mine. And beneath it, folded neatly, was a single sheet of paper. Arthur's handwriting, unmistakable. "If you're reading this, Eve, I failed you. I thought I could fix it. I was wrong." No signature, no date, just that. I sat down on the small bench beside the box, the envelope warm in my hands despite the chill around me. I could feel everything shifting. This was the real will, the one we wrote together, not the butchered version Lena and Pike were parading around in courtrooms. I wanted to cry or scream. Or tear it open right there, but I didn't. Not yet. I tucked it gently into my bag, folded the note next to it, and locked the box behind me. Empty now. A tomb without a body. Back in the lobby, the manager offered a tight smile. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "Yes," I said. "Everything." I walked out into the sunlight, the traffic blaring like I'd never died at all. Arthur failed me, but he also left a path. I had the envelope, the ledger, the recordings, and the fire. As I stepped off the curb, I whispered, "I'm coming back. This time not to survive. This time to burn it down." I stared at the paper for a long time before I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a marriage certificate. Arthur Harper and Sylvia Moore. Signed, witnessed, official. Irene's cousin, Callie, had found it while combing through one of the encrypted folders from the micro SD card. "I thought it was your certificate at first," she said. "But the date's wrong, and so's the bride." My stomach twisted. The date was 6 years ago. 6 years. I had still been making him breakfast, still pressing his shirts, still leaving handwritten notes in his briefcase, all while he was walking down another aisle with another woman. I asked Callie to keep reading. She did. The emails between Arthur and Sylvia started tender, secret getaways, plans to eventually make things clean. But then the tone shifted. Sylvia got impatient, angry, demanding. One message stopped me cold. "If she ever finds out, you'll lose everything. I'll make sure of it." He never responded to that one. Or maybe he did, and deleted it. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. Gold. Faint engraving inside. "Yours always." "Always?" I stared at it, then slipped it off my finger. My skin felt colder without it. like it had been holding in heat and betrayal all these years. Sylvia wore silver. She mentioned it in a message. Still waiting on the proper ring. Proper, as if I were the draft, the stand-in, the warm-up act. I closed the laptop and stood up from Callie's desk. The air in the room suddenly felt too thin, like the lies were using up all the oxygen. "I need to find her," I said. Callie blinked. "You want to find Sylvia?" I nodded. She didn't just steal him. She helped bury me. I left without saying goodbye, the ring in my fist, cutting into my palm. Back at Tomas's cabin, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, not looking for beauty, just looking for what was left. How many wives does it take to bury one truth? Apparently 2, but one of them just came back from the grave, and she's done staying quiet. You know that feeling when someone's watching you, but every time you turn around, there's nothing there? That was me for 2 days straight. At first, I thought it was just nerves. Trauma makes ghosts out of everything. But then I saw the black SUV, parked near the grocery store, then again near the post office. Same tinted windows, same dent on the rear bumper. And when I visited Arthur's grave, empty, just a headstone and hollow dirt, I saw it idling across the street like a silent threat. I knew better than to confront them. Tomas noticed, too. "They're not here to kill you," he said. "Not yet." "What are they waiting for?" "Proof that you're really alive." So we made a plan. The docks at Low Harbor were quiet after sundown. I wore a hoodie, kept my head low, and walked with purpose. But instead of boarding Lydia, Tomas's boat, I stepped onto a rusted old fishing vessel named Mara. I kept my movements slow, deliberate, like someone trying to disappear. The SUV appeared just as I untied the dock line, parked, lights off, engine humming. I didn't look directly, but I could feel the lens on me. Watching. Then, click. A camera flash. Subtle, but I caught it. They didn't chase, didn't shout, just proof. I stayed on the boat until it was well past dark, letting the water rock me gently while my pulse kept time with the waves. Whoever they were, they knew I was alive now. That wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that they hadn't stopped me, which meant they didn't need to. Not yet. Back at the cabin, Tomas waited with black coffee and a sharpened pocket knife. "They won't act fast," he said. "They want to flush you out, make you panic, move too soon." I nodded, exhausted. "So what do I do?" "Simple," he said, handing me the mug. "You don't panic. You plan." I stood by the window, watching the trees sway, every shadow a question. They wanted proof? Now they had it. But they didn't know I had more than life. I had evidence, and soon I'd have a courtroom. I thought I'd imagined him at first. The sky was still purple when Eric stepped onto the pier, hoodie pulled up, hands buried deep in his coat. He looked like the little boy I used to walk here every Saturday. Same posture, same quiet hesitation. He stood near the edge, where the railing was rusted. Just stood, waiting. I stepped out from behind the boat and said, "You came." He turned. Slowly, when his eyes met mine, they widened, not in fear, but in disbelief. "Mom?" His voice broke. He didn't run to me. He didn't collapse. He just stared, like if he blinked I'd vanish. I nodded. "It's really me." He walked forward, one step at a time, until we were 2 feet apart. His lip trembled. I thought you were... I know." We sat on the wooden bench by the old crab traps, just like we used to. He rubbed his palms together, nervous. "Lena said you'd been acting strange, that you weren't well." I didn't interrupt. I let the lie dangle. "She said you'd been hiding things, talking to yourself. She even showed me messages, said you were threatening to ruin everything." I swallowed. "Did you believe her?" He looked at me ashamed. "Part of me did. She was so calm, so certain." "Abusers are often calm," I said quietly. "They rehearse." He looked away. "I have the real will," I added, "and Arthur's letter, and the transactions. I'm not crazy, Eric. I was silenced. He wiped his face. I didn't know what to do. I placed a hand over his. You don't have to do anything yet. Just know the truth exists, and I'm not gone. He stared at our hands for a long time, then reached into his coat and pulled something out. The savings jar. Old, cracked, faded. He pressed it into my palm without a word. A piece of childhood. A thread between us that Lena hadn't cut. He stood. I can't be seen with you, he whispered. Not yet. I understand. But I believe you now. I closed my fingers around the jar. He walked away without looking back. But I didn't need his eyes this time. I had his whisper, and that was enough to wait for. We didn't have a courtroom. We had a living room. Callie moved the coffee table aside, set up 2 chairs across from each other, and pulled out a stack of papers, clipped tight with red tabs. Irene made strong tea and muttered, We should have done this in a church basement. More holy. I smiled, nervous. I'll settle for truth. The table was bare except for 3 things: a voice recorder, a box of tissues, and my hands, clasped tightly, knuckles pale. All right, Callie said. Let's begin. She pressed record. State your full name. Evelyn Grace Harper. And why are you here? Because I was declared dead while still breathing. Callie didn't blink. You vanished after a car crash. Why didn't you contact the authorities immediately? I was injured, isolated, and someone wanted me quiet. Can you prove that? Yes. I slid forward the blue envelope, the ledger, and a printed transcript from the micro SD card. These are original documents: my name, my signature, the transactions, the second marriage. Callie nodded, then turned cold. Isn't it true that Lena Harper claimed you were mentally unwell? That you had become paranoid in the months before your accident? My throat tightened. I reached for the locket at my neck, clutching it like a lifeline. My husband was preparing to erase me. My daughter-in-law was rewriting our life. If I sounded paranoid, it's because I was surrounded by people making me question my sanity. Callie paused, then leaned in. You're calm now. But will you be that calm on the stand? I looked her dead in the eye. I don't need to be calm. I need to be honest. She studied me for a moment, then clicked off the recorder. Irene sat back with a soft smile. She's ready. I wasn't sure I believed that until I saw myself in the mirror across the room. Bruised, wrinkled, worn, but not broken. Not anymore. I walked over, picked up the recorder, and rewound the tape. My voice crackled, soft but clear. My name is Evelyn Harper, I heard myself say, and I'm not done yet. And neither is the truth. The envelope had no return address. Tomas found it tucked under the front gate, sealed tight in padded brown paper. No stamps, no handwriting, just a blank, quiet threat. He brought it inside with a frown. It's for you. The moment I held it, I knew. It was too soft, too light, too personal. I peeled back the flap with shaking fingers and froze. My wedding veil, or half of it, torn clean through, the lace frayed at the edges, still delicate, still familiar, and soaked in perfume. Not mine, hers. That cloying, oversweet scent Sylvia wore like a mask, floral with something rotten underneath. The scent rose like a ghost, curling around my throat, pressing into my lungs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared. Tomas placed a hand on my shoulder. What does it mean? She wants me to know, I said. That she sees me. That she's not finished. He nodded slowly. And are you? I looked down at the veil again, then carried it outside, found the old metal basin we used for boiling water, lit a match from the emergency tin, and set the lace inside. The flame took fast, too fast. It curled, blackened, folded in on itself. I watched it die. That veil had walked down an aisle with me, tied me to a man who split his love in 2. Now it was nothing but ash. Tomas stayed silent. He knew better than to offer comfort. I stood there, wind brushing against my face, the scent of Sylvia's perfume now replaced with smoke, and something almost clean. Back inside, I packed. The real will, the ledger, the note. The locket stayed around my neck, still warm. I zipped the bag, slid it onto my shoulder, and took one last look at the fire pit. "They tried to bury me with lace," I whispered, "but I'm rising in fire." And I meant it. The courthouse didn't need to see my face to feel my presence. Callie submitted the papers at 8:01 a.m. sharp, challenge to the will, motion to reopen the estate, and a subpoena request for one Sylvia Moore. 3 decades of silence, love, betrayal, and fraud, summarized in 12 pages and a thick binder of evidence, included the original will in Arthur's handwriting, financial transfers to Lena's maiden name, the micro SD card, decrypted, my sworn statement, notarized under my legal identity, not Eve the ghost, Evelyn Harper, alive, coherent, and prepared for war. Sylvia would be caught off guard. Her name hadn't appeared in the public paperwork, yet, but she was part of this, and the court would now demand answers. Lena and Pike? They'd be served within the hour, and I'd be watching. I parked across the street from their law office in a borrowed car. Tomas sat beside me, flipping through a crossword, calm as ever. "There," he murmured. The courier crossed the lobby, 2 envelopes in hand. Official, heavy, irrefutable. I watched Pike open his first. His face froze. Lena leaned in to read over his shoulder. Her expression turned brittle, then sharp, like a cornered animal. They stood, argued, lips moving fast. I couldn't hear a word, but I didn't need to. I'd heard enough lies already. Tomas looked over. "Ready to stop hiding?" I nodded. I reached into my bag, pulled out the locket, and wrapped the chain twice around my wrist like armor. It was the first time in months I felt more like a woman than a ghost. The first time I felt visible. They forged a version of me they could control, a quiet name in an obituary, a soft victim in silk. But I wasn't soft, and I wasn't done. I watched them scramble, pacing like rats in a burning maze. This wasn't just revenge. It wasn't even justice. It was reclamation, of name, of breath, of truth. I rolled down the window, letting in the wind. "I was invisible by force," I whispered. "Now I'll be undeniable by choice." I didn't sleep that night. The wind howled against the windows, and even though the fire crackled soft in the hearth, I couldn't get warm. The court hearing was set for 9:00 a.m. Probate chamber. Judge Harlan, stern but fair, according to Callie. I sat at the kitchen table, laying everything out like weapons. The original will, still sealed in its blue envelope. Arthur's handwritten note. "If you're reading this, Eve, I failed you." The ledger, annotated and tagged. The micro SD card, loaded with emails and payment records. The locket, worn thin but heavy with memory. And beside it all, a small black and white photo. Me, age 19, before Arthur, before Eric, before silence. I whispered the words I'd rehearsed, my name, my statement, my evidence, my voice cracked halfway through. I cleared it and started again. Doubt snuck in, sharp and sudden. What if they don't believe me? What if Pike twists everything? What if Eric stays quiet? What if I lose everything? But then I looked at the travel clock Thomas had set beside my bed, a little brass thing, old and ticking, just like the one in the house where this started. It hadn't missed a beat all night. I held the locket to my chest. It didn't tremble. Neither did I. At 5:30, I boiled water. No appetite, but made tea anyway. At 6:00, I dressed. Simple blouse. Navy blazer, small gold earrings Arthur once bought in Venice. The irony burned. At 6:30, I braided my hair back, clean, controlled. At 7:00, I stared into the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, but not afraid. They had written my ending for me. Now I'd give them a new one. I picked up my bag, paused at the door. Tomas gave a nod from the hallway. "We drive slow," he said. "Let them stew." I smiled. "Let them hear my voice." I looked back at the empty table, at the space where I laid out my life like evidence. Let them see the woman they tried to erase, and let them learn what resurrection really looks like. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Stale air, gray carpet, one lonely plant wilting in the corner like it had heard too many lies and finally gave up. I stepped through the doorway just as the bailiff was calling the docket. Lena was already seated, flawless in black, pearl earrings, not a hair out of place. She leaned toward Pike, whispering something with fake concern on her face. She hadn't seen me yet. I walked slowly, deliberately, each step like thunder in my chest. Pike looked up first, his mouth parted, not in shock, in calculation. You could see it happening behind his eyes, years of manipulation unraveling in 3 heartbeats. Then Lena turned, and everything in her face crumbled, color drained, jaw slack. She gripped the table like the floor might give out. I didn't look at her, not yet. I walked past the observers, past the clerk, straight to the plaintiff's table, and I sat down, beside her. She flinched. I placed the blue envelope on the wood with a soft tap. Let it sit there, whole, sealed, undeniable. The judge entered. Clerk read the case. "Challenger, Evelyn Harper," she said. Heads turned. The judge looked up sharply. "Is that correct?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor." My voice didn't shake. Lena still hadn't moved. She just stared. I could feel her breath hitch, could almost hear her thoughts racing, trying to find a version of reality where I wasn't sitting beside her. Then, quiet as a needle in silk, she whispered, "You're not real." I turned to her, slow, met her eyes. "Neither," I said, "is the will you brought." The courtroom didn't gasp, but it shifted. And Lena? She was already unraveling, not with screams, but with silence. Because ghosts don't need to shout to haunt a room. Sometimes they just sit down beside you. I stood with my palms flat on the wooden railing, the blue envelope resting between them. Judge Harlan adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Harper, we've heard sworn statements and seen documents. What makes you so certain this version of the will is fraudulent?" I didn't look at Lena, or Pike. I looked straight at the judge. "Because Arthur hid the truth, and he left me the key." I reached into my blazer and pulled it out, the tiny brass thing that had lived in the shadows of our home. This was taped beneath the pendulum of our grandfather clock, the one Arthur called the only place time behaves. He didn't trust Pike. He didn't trust Lena. So he left a backup, for me. I handed it to the court officer. "And what does it open?" "A safe deposit box at Greater First Bank, box 317. The judge nodded to the clerk. "Have the officer verify it and send someone to the Harper residence. Inspect the clock. I want residue, fingerprints, anything that tells me that key has been there as long as she claims." Pike finally spoke. "Your Honor, this is speculation. She could have planted—" "Sit down, Mr. Pike," the judge snapped. The courtroom shifted. An hour passed. Then 2. When the officer returned, he held up a clear evidence bag. The base of the pendulum shows aged adhesive residue and a dust imprint matching the key. We also pulled partial fingerprints, 2 distinct, both matching Mrs. Harper's. Print age consistent with her timeline. My knees almost gave out, but I stayed standing. The judge turned to me again. "And what does this mean to you, Mrs. Harper?" I looked down at the key, then back at him. "It means my husband wanted me to find the truth. And it means that if that clock could speak, it would say exactly what I am saying now." I turned, finally meeting Lena's eyes. They buried the wrong woman. Pike's hand tightened around his pen. Lena didn't blink, but the courtroom believed me, because time doesn't lie, and neither did I. Pike's voice was lower now, tighter. He objected 3 times in under 5 minutes, but the judge had lost patience. The documents, the timestamps, the fingerprints, it was too much. And then Sylvia took the stand. She wore beige, modest, nervous. At first, her answers were clipped. "No." "I don't remember." I was grieving. But then Callie handed the bailiff a printout, an email, one Sylvia sent just weeks before the car crash. He said if I stayed quiet, I'd never want for anything again. The judge leaned forward. Miss Moore, did Arthur Harper promise you compensation in the event of his wife's death? Sylvia hesitated, then nodded. Yes. And did you know Evelyn Harper was alive when you signed a revised marriage statement? Another long pause. Then, quietly, yes. The courtroom stirred. Callie moved in. And who introduced you to Mr. Pike? Sylvia blinked. Lena did. That was it. The match. The courtroom burst into murmurs. The judge banged his gavel but didn't hide his scowl. Mr. Pike, he said, we've now linked you to off-record financial channels and contradictory testimony. I suggest you choose your next words carefully. Pike stood. Your Honor, I request a recess. Denied. Lena rose from her seat. Her voice, so smooth for weeks, now cracked. I was manipulated, she said. Arthur made me believe. Callie cut her off. You accepted over $150,000 in wire transfers under your maiden name. That's not manipulation. That's partnership. Lena opened her mouth, closed it. Silence. The judge sighed. Pending full review, the revised will is frozen. The court recognizes Evelyn Harper as a living, legal party. The clerk scribbled furiously. Pike sat down, face pale. Sylvia buried her face in her hands. And Lena? She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just looked at me. And for the first time, not with hate, with fear, because I wasn't the ghost anymore. I was the fire walking back through the front door. Empires built on paper fall when the wind changes, and I had just opened the windows. The courthouse emptied slowly, like a theater after a long, strange play. Some people left whispering. Others didn't look back at all. I sat on the marble bench outside, coat draped over my lap, the morning sun just beginning to rise through the smog. My name had been restored, the will upheld, the signatures authenticated, fraud proven. I was real again. But being real was quieter than I expected. No applause, no parade, just breath and stillness. Then I heard footsteps. I didn't look up right away. I knew them. That soft rhythm, the way the soles hit the pavement like they were carrying more than weight. Eric. He sat beside me without a word. We watched the street together, people crossing, cabs honking, life continuing as if resurrection were an everyday thing. After a long silence, he reached into his coat pocket. Arthur's ring. He held it out to me. I took it slowly. Felt the weight of it again. Gold, worn, warm from his hand. He didn't deserve you, Eric said. I smiled. He didn't know what to do with me. He nodded. I turned the ring in my palm, then I handed it back, closed his fingers around it. Keep time honest, I said. He swallowed hard. Will I see you again? I'm not going anywhere, I said. Not anymore. He stood, gave me one last look, then walked down the steps. I stayed seated, not because I had nowhere to go, but because for the first time in months, I wasn't running. The locket still hung around my neck. The envelope rested in my bag. The story wasn't erased. It was rewritten. By me. I looked up at the courthouse clock, ticking steady, clear, unchanged. Time had told the truth. And so had I. They tried to write my ending. But I was never theirs to finish.